Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show. Bring it!
Let me ask you this question. I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, to an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their right. Unlike the right that someone has, all of our rights exist in context.
What's the context of a second medical opinion?
Because you're disrespecting the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you seem to do, you're just dealing with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a future, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Hi there, pleasant Wednesday evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show, coming from the Cherry Dragon Research Center, which is commonly known throughout Guyana as Red House. In case you're too young to know, this building is named Red House, where Premier of Guyana, Dr. Cherry Dragon, in the late 50s and early 60s, lived as the elected Premier of Guyana. It is one of the iconic buildings that is preserved by the Heritage Department of the Ministry of Culture and Youth. We are inside the building in the photography room. If you look behind, you will see untold numbers of photographs of President Cherry Dragon, his wife, and his associates and friends. Here this evening, as you can see from the camera, to discuss something very, very important that is happening to the world is former President Donald Ramotar. Since I have known Mr. Ramotar more than 60 years ago, he's always had as his baby international politics, foreign affairs, global affairs. That has been his interest since I've known him when we were teenagers together. What has happened the past 2 weeks is that the United States government has issued a document that all US governments normally issue, and it's routine. The world hardly takes notice of it. It's a routine thing for the government of the United States to periodically publish a document called National Security Strategy. This is the National Security Strategy of the US government for 2025. This document is very, very disturbing, in many respects, very frightening. It's not a document that I think the world will welcome with open arms. And this is a document coming from one of the superpowers of the world. President Ramotar will explain its ramifications, consequences, but most of all, its unpalatable dimensions and its unacceptable dimensions. So once again, in case you don't know, we are coming from Red House, also known as the Cherry Dragon Research Center. And here with us is former President Donald Ramotar, who would know this building in the back of his hand. Donald, thanks for being here. And I know you're going to maybe frighten many of our viewers with your discussion of this. The part that I find very disturbing, and I start with that, is in which the United States government is saying that Europe is facing civilizational erasure because the white European culture is being diluted. That sounds like what Nazi Germany was saying about the Jews and non-white races. But Donald, we have an hour. Tell the world about this document.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm not so, unlike you, I'm not so scared of the document because I think there are some positive things in the document as well, but there are some very negative stuff that you mentioned. One of it you just raised, maybe we could deal with that first. It's the issue of what you said about Europe, and there is an element, I believe, of racism attached to that. And I think the concept is completely wrong because the United States itself, as an example, will show that the United States is the richest country in the world, one of the most successful countries in the world. It has, but it is also a very mixed country with diverse culture, and what it has shown is that once you embrace your diversity, then it can be an advantage to your economic, social, and even cultural development of your society. But here, the United States is having a very negative view of the diversification in some European countries because of migration. Migrants are going there, and they are seeing that in a negative way. It's a level of racism because. And in fact, the present administration in the United States has been demonstrating this even before. I don't know if you recall, Freddie, that the Trump administration created totally false propaganda about South African whites are being persecuted by the South African government, and they are encouraging white South Africans to go to the United States as against black South Africans or colored South Africans or Indian South Africans from going there. So we can detect a strong bias against non-white part of the population by the present United States administration. And I think it's totally wrong, as I mentioned at the very beginning, that I don't agree with that concept. But I agree that it's very negative to say that these people will erase the word that they use, civilization erasure. That is what I don't agree that with what is happening in Europe.
But
secondly,
but before you go on, if we research Nazi Germany, I would think they may have used that phrase, that Germany's culture is being debased by the Jews, by non-white. I mean, it has a Nazi flavor to it.
Yeah, all racism would have that kind of flavor, because when you talk like we see where it's taken the Israeli government that turned into a real fascist government in Israel, and their ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. But the other point I was going to make is that the Americans should also recognize that part of the problem with immigrants going into Europe and immigrants moving anywhere, a lot of it has to do with the policies of the United States government and the government of Europe itself, by creating forever wars in the Middle East, that you had a lot of Afghanis going there, people from Syria, destroying people's countries. Because
I think the US has a base right now in Syria.
Yeah, all over the world.
In the people's country.
And
they still have a base in Iraq.
What they did in Iraq and so forth, those are the things that are driving. People don't want to leave their homes. Iraq was despite the fact that none of us liked the Saddam Hussein government politically, but it was doing far better than what is happening now in terms of people's welfare. And
they bombed Libya, Sarkozy, the French president.
All over
they create problems to people that tell them they don't want them.
Middle East, Africa, all over the world, they create these problems and create the conditions for exodus of people moving to trying to avoid wars and trying to get a better lifestyle, in some cases economic migrants and so forth. So what would have been better for the document to concentrate on, like what the Chinese are doing, is trying to create prosperity in the different countries in order that people could not only stay in their countries, in their home countries, but also be viable countries to do business with and help with their prosperity. That is if you compare this document to last year, the Chinese put out a document about global governance and so forth, you will see it's the stark contrast. The Chinese, that they're trying to help developing countries to enrich themselves, to be viable, to be able to trade on a more equitable basis with other countries, and also to try to end wars. The Chinese went over working quietly. They had a position with Saudi Arabia and Iran, trying to end their conflicts and so forth. But in the case of the United States, they have forever wars all over there right now in Venezuela, trying to overthrow the
They want to go into Venezuela, yeah.
So the whole
In the document, they're saying we will leave people alone, our interests in the United States. What are they doing? What do they want to go into Venezuela for?
I don't also have any problem with what they said at the very beginning of the document with their objectives. They want to they want to remain as a strong country and so on and so forth. It's the method I'm worried about, because this is now leading them to try to create problems with China. And because China is doing a lot of work in developing countries, helping them with their deficit that they have in infrastructure and technology and so forth, training people and helping people, and they are moving in the opposite direction and now trying to create the impression that China is taking advantage of them and so forth, which is totally not true. Totally not true. There's a lot of negativity in the document. The other negativity that I want to bring out is their attitude towards climate change in this document, where they were speaking about in the section that deals with energy, the emphasis is on fossil fuel. And they are criticizing other countries and other people who are trying to go in the direction of clean fuel so that they help the disasters in the world. They are denying that some of the terrible changes that we're seeing in the weather patterns, Jamaica has just been destroyed, Indonesia has just been destroyed, many other countries have just been because of the erratic weather conditions. They are burying their heads in the sand and denying that this has to do with climate change. And other results of that, they have become even more aggressive in searching for oil and fossil fuel that we know is poisoning the Earth's atmosphere and creating disasters all over the place. So I think that the Americans, they're not using their enormous potential for peace and for the better welfare of the people, but trying to use it for domination purposes. And that brings me to Latin America and the Caribbean, where I think this document is practically a colonial document. This document is saying that America will not tolerate not only military bases. Okay, we can probably have some sympathy with that, because we all don't want to have any. We always speak about the Caribbean and Latin America being a zone of peace, and then therefore we don't want military powers to come in our region to create any problem with the United States. But they're extended that to economics, and they're saying that they don't, very, very explicitly, they're making a focus to try to say that they're going to expel China from the country. And why I say that, why I'm pointing out that and highlighting that, because some people might say that this is the opinion of the Trump's administration, but it's not an opinion of the Trump's administration alone. It is the position of the United States. If you remember when Biden was in government, the last G7 meeting that he had, the G7 took a position to raise funds to counter, not to counter, the Belt and Road Initiative that China is pushing. And we know that the Belt and Road Initiative is bringing a lot of benefits to many countries. China is also creating a totally new atmosphere and a new foreign policy. That's a win-win foreign policy that they're pushing. But the United States, seeing that in order for them to remain on top, they must try to do things to prevent China's development and to prevent China from helping other countries. China must not be involved in any other countries, and particularly speaking about in the region. Some of the positive things in the document is that they're saying they admitted that they can't solve the world's problem, and sometimes even though you have difficult issues in different parts of the world, the Americans can't get involved in all
why are they
things.
going to Venezuela?
But
That's a contradiction.
in this hemisphere, this document is a practical, a colonial document where they now become the colonial masters for the whole of the Western Hemisphere, including Western Europe and other countries. This is why they can speak so derogatorily about the civilization in Europe and the changes that are taking place in Europe at this point.
One of the thing about China, which, Donald, I don't think the world, and I am emphasizing the world, the thing about China that the world doesn't know, but the American military and political establishment knows, is the extent of this country's achievement in economics, in infrastructure, in modernization. And what the United States has been accustomed to is a second-rate contestant in the Soviet Union that didn't have that kind of modern resources and modern things that attracted people. But this country, China, is just, in comparison with any other country in the world, it's a phenomenon. Donald, you've been to China the past month. These people, railway system, these people, infrastructure. There is nothing in the United States like Beijing Airport. No. And there's nothing the United States will achieve in another 50 years at Beijing Airport. Those people trains are faster than the speed of light. And I think they know this is the country that is going to eclipse them.
For instance, one of the things that they have here at the deal with China is that the United States cannot allow any nation to become so dominant that it could threaten our interests. But China is not threatening there. Even though China is developing very rapidly, and they're not threatening America in any way militarily. Their spending is a fraction of your spending in military. They're reaching out. They're always holding out olive branch and want more cooperation and want more dealings with the United States and so forth. And this also, while in a way it's a recognition by the United States, even though not explicitly, but a recognition that the world is moving away from a unipolar world to a more multipolar world. This recognizes that, but it is saying that it is fighting against it. Why should you fight against something that is natural, something that is naturally taking place? China already, in GDP terms, it might not have overtaken America, but in purchasing power parity, China has already overtaken America as the #1 economy in the world. It depends on what measurement you use. GDP, the Americans are the biggest economy in the world, but using the PPP measurement, purchasing power parity measurement, China is the most developed country already in the world. So I don't know, but it is not a danger. What I'm saying is this: it is not that China is fighting to take over America. China is just seeking to create conditions for its own development, and to do that, they have to create conditions for other countries' development as well. That is why they talk about a win-win situation and economic relations and trade relations that are mutually beneficial to themselves. So I think that the concept, the very concept of this paper is wrong, and also their attitude to the hemisphere is going to create a lot of problems, because I do not see, particularly Latin American countries, with 200 years of independence and so forth, that they will accept, the people of Latin America will accept to be colonialized and to be totally dominated by the United States. And I expect that there will be a lot of resistance to this, which will cause a lot of tension and will explode our position in the Caribbean as the Caribbean being a zone of peace.
I read the document, and one of the
I
things...
read it hurriedly. I have to reread it again.
But please reread it, because one of the assertions in it is that the US will defend its security interests, and the United States have security interests around the world. When you read the document, you wonder what's going through the mind of the Indian, Chinese, and Russian leadership. The document is clearly saying the United States have national security interests around the world, and we would not allow anyone, any nation to undermine it. But what are China and Russia and India saying? They don't have national security
interests? I think the Russians are pretty happy with the document in some areas. I believe that
Putin said he's happy with
that some of the position that the document has taken, that they can't, what in my view this document is saying, that the American main focus will be in the Western Hemisphere, particularly Latin America and the Caribbean. And that will be their main focus, and they have made no bones about it, that they are ready to intervene militarily and otherwise into the affairs of these countries. But for other countries, they're recognizing that they don't want to, that they will not be able to impose their will on many other countries because of cultural differences and so on and so forth. And I think that for both China and Russia, I believe, that is what they can take as positive from this document.
But if they mean it, if the document is not for PR
I don't believe that they will accept also the other part. I don't believe that they will accept that they must not have relationship with countries in Latin America and the Caribbean or in the Western Hemisphere. I don't believe that that is a position that they will accept, and they will have contradictions. Particularly China. China has
China's been
a lot of
port in Peru.
A lot of investment in the whole Latin America and the Caribbean. Deep, substantial investment that they cannot ignore. And therefore, I think that they will not be happy with this. And I don't think that they will respect this, because I think that they will move on the basis that countries have a right to have their own kind of relations and so on.
I read the document, and it doesn't gel with you and I and our days growing up in Guyana, then our entry into politics. I have read this document, and it says nothing. Now, the document I welcome in my country is the Belt and Road Initiative. Right. And we've seen advantage of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Donald, if you go through this document, it doesn't, in fact, there's a reduction of aid. The reduction of aid, reduction of development assistance is part of the Trump's policy. I lived in this country my whole life, and I have never seen the Western world. I've never seen the United States that overtook Europe after the Second World War. I have never seen what they have done for us. It's only with the discovery of oil we're seeing massive buildings going up, airport expansion, our new bridge. What has the US done for the Caribbean? Ron Sanders, Guyanese Ron Sanders, who's Antigua ambassador to the UN, published a good paper in which he showed from 2019. Some Caribbean countries get less than $1 million in aid from the US. But so how are you going to ask us to accept the US presence if China is giving us something?
No. Between you and I am personally not so concerned about the USAID that they're cutting out a lot of support from.
Yeah, that was
because that organization will be
overthrow governments around the world. I wrote a
support
column on
government
it, yeah.
all over the world.
All over the world.
And I have-
That was the purpose
and
of
I
it.
have no sympathy for it.
The A thing was just a front.
So what Trump is saying here, what this present administration in the United States, they are saying is that they are not going to waste their money on these type of things. They want it from medical force. I don't have a problem with that. Genuine assistance, yes, and I would see if they have genuine assistance and so forth. But the USAID has always been.
Yeah, but you would know they
used
overthrew Japan. There was a vehicle
by
for
the
the overthrowing
CIA.
of them to Japan.
And they not all over the world that they, in fact, they have now accumulated so much of experience that NGOs played a large part in regime change for them. That's how they did it in using color revolutions and NGOs
Yeah,
in
Eastern
Ukraine
Europe, yeah.
and many other countries. They use
Yeah, the USAID
and
funded it with that.
right in Guyana here. I saw this, in fact, I was thinking about writing something about it. I saw the report of the European Union on our elections, and they were saying they're not categorizing it as free and fair because they say that the government had advantages of being incumbency. But what they are not saying that the private media was totally against the government. And secondly, if they were so concerned with fairness, they should have given the PPP some of the money that they transferred to the opposition through NGOs in this country.
Yeah. Oh, I have some frightening documents about
Through
that.
the NGOs.
I have to show you.
Yeah.
Donald, I have documented the amount of money. I have documented and speaking. I wrote this in a column this week, and in that column I said I will give these documents to the president and the vice president and the attorney general. I have documents. The latest one is $57 million going to an anti-government
They're
NGO.
using the NGOs or some NGOs to transfer money to fight against the PPP.
Yeah.
So if they were interested
I
in
have
fairness,
evidence. I have evidence.
if
of
they
that.
have,
I have evidence. Of
if they're interested in fairness, they should have given the PPP some of the money, shared equally, and that is, instead of making all.
You would be surprised.
They
You
are
would-
intervening. The European Union was deeply involved in the campaign with the opposition.
You would be surprised if I show you what documents I have.
Okay, I'll be
They
happy.
have funneled money. This thing is about the National Security Strategy document, so we need to get back to that. But just quickly,
It's related because it's
people don't know this, Donald, but there is an esoteric part of that elections, that 2025 elections, that has not come out and may never come out, as to why Amarindian lady Joretta Finance became the prime ministerial candidate of the PNC and not another guy, Ganesh Mahipal or what have you. Because the PNC in the 2025 election was heavily funded by an Amerindian NGO which got their money from the EU office. I have the documents of how much money went to this Amerindian NGO, and the Amerindian NGO said, we want Joretta Finance.
Yeah. I totally believe you because that is clearly their fingerprints heavily in some of these things.
But let's get back to
Back to this document.
This document.
Which is related, by the way. It's related to what we were doing.
Yeah, yes. With Trump getting rid of USAID or what have you. The problem with that document, which I think is frightening, it's not going to allow third world countries or global south countries to have friendly and economic and financial relations with countries that they can benefit from. And that is what is frightening about it. They don't want China, Iran, and India in the Caribbean.
But I see it slightly different. I think it goes with geography. I think what they're saying, they'll be much more careful in dealing with countries in Asia, maybe certain parts of Africa, because of the distance it is from them. But in Latin America and the Caribbean, they are not tolerating.
So it's the Monroe Doctrine back in
Right, Monroe Doctrine on steroids, that they are not going to tolerate any other countries here, particularly at this point in time when oil is discovered in Guyana. Venezuela has the largest reserve of oil. Probably they might even have, like Guyana, Venezuela probably got more gold and diamond and minerals than we have. Maybe they have even rare earth, which is not discovered. And in Latin America, the same thing with Latin American countries, heavily endowed with mineral resources and so forth. And they don't, this is not only military, but economically, they don't want any other country to have relationship with us. Therefore, they're trying to impose a colonial type of relationship with the region. That America is a super colonial power, bigger than what Britain ever was, and they want to control the whole Western Hemisphere. While they recognize they might not be able to do that in all parts of the world, because it might be an overstretch for them. That is the impression I get from them.
But we have to wait and see if they're going to have problems with China in the South China Seas.
But I don't think that they will stop, because what in my view that they're seeing China as the main competitor.
All the intelligence arms of the United States government have reported that China is the main adversary.
Although China continues to say that they have absolutely no interest in being the dominant power. If it happens, it happens, but China will be a more, not an aggressive, even if China becomes the #1 economy by GDP standards, by that yardstick, China has a totally different history than the United States, and China will never be
it was a non-colonial power. It's also non-Caucasian.
It has a totally different type of philosophy. It was, apart from the socialist Marxist philosophy that guides them at one level, the Chinese philosophy also, this concept of the rising tide lifting all boats, which is totally Chinese philosophy, Confucius type of thinking, does not allow China to be an aggressive imperialist type of state. That China's total philosophy leads it to more cooperation and mutual development.
But here what I want to ask you as someone
which is totally different from here, that if you look at the very first part of this program, where it said, to ensure that America remains the world's strongest, richest, most powerful, and most successful country for the decades to come, our country needs this policy and so forth. But it's the means that they're using. They're saying that they're ready to use force in order to keep this position. They're ready to push governments, frighten governments, threaten them with regime change, and so forth, to try to make them cut relationship with China and any other country that they might have relationship with. This is what is coming.
But here what I want to ask you. You tell a region, we don't want you to have anything to do with Iran and China. No, keep these people at bay. But what happens in those countries with economic development? If you look at our country and the network of roads, we haven't gone anywhere. We still got one road leading to the East Coast. We still got one road leading to the airport. So what happens then when a country like China or India or Iran decide to help economic development in South America and the Caribbean? So they're going to intervene and say, no, but who is putting these resources in?
Well, the impression I get from reading the document, as I said, I read it very quickly, and I got to look back at it again more carefully. But the impression I get is that they are going to, the United States government, the apparatus, is there to serve their business purposes. Internationally, their international relation is there to serve the big transnational corporation. they will demand that their cooperation have the first bite, and only if they feel that they can't do it, or they wouldn't do it, or they must be the one to allow it, to tell you that okay, then you can bring in, allow the Chinese to do this more. That's the impression I get.
So if we are going to build a teachers training college and put it somewhere up the East Coast or move from Turkey, and we're going to make it into a full level with elevators and modern classrooms, and we tender, and the Chinese say 800 million, and the US say 1.2 billion, we still have to give that to the Americans.
I'm not saying that we have to, but I'm saying that the document suggests to me
that we have
they
to go
will
with
use
the
their clout
and pressure.
to pressure to say that they must give it to the American company, and maybe they might use this frivolous argument that the quality would be better. In fact, they said so in the document that by engaging American companies, that you will get better quality of work than with any other company from any other part of the world, which is total nonsense.
You've been to China, I think, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. China has fantastic. China got fantastic infrastructure.
When you look, it's unspeakable what those people have achieved. When you look at those people,
and this also shows you.
They built a bridge, a new bridge for us. Yeah.
It also shows you, unlike what the Americans are doing to Cuba and to many other countries to try to sanction them, to distort their development, they show you what America don't want to have is the success of any other socio-economic system, because they're afraid that it will attract more and more people to it. China is demonstrating that. Vietnam is demonstrating that. Some other countries are demonstrating that right now. And that is what they don't want, and they want to make these countries fail. It's not that these countries are failing because of their economic policies and so forth. They're being failed because of the blockade, because of sanctions, and because of they're not allowed. They're not allowed to develop, and then they will say that they are failing because they're trying something new, and that is what they're doing. The military, the U.S. military, who does it serve? It doesn't serve the people of the United States. How killing, giving bombs and so forth to Israel, to murder people, to create ethnic cleansing of a fascist regime. How does that threaten? How does that the Palestinian people threaten the United States? What military strength the Palestinians? They don't have an army. They don't have anything. How do you justify that? This is just philosophy on their part, because they want to use the place to make money. They are already saying they want to make it like a Nevada, and they want to rape the resources that are there for their own purposes and so forth. So
it's colonialism all over again.
It is a new form.
It's colonialism all over again. The 2025 National Security Strategy of the United States. You have to read this document. Former President Donald Ramotar says it clearly seeks recolonization of South America and the Caribbean. But Donald, let's go to that. The main thrust of the document is, look, we don't want to get entangled in far-off areas that are geographically far from us. How does Iran fit into this? Because they seem to have a profound rejection of Iran's role where Iran is located.
Well, I think there's two aspects with Iran. There's a historical aspect, that they had installed the Shah of Iran in Iran. They had been controlling everything in Iran, all the wealth of Iran. And there's second, so that when the government changed in 1979, that changed completely, and their companies were pushed out of Iran. And more than that, Iran has humiliated them by seizing their embassies and so forth. So I don't think they have forgotten that. And there's that element of revenge in their policy.
Vendetta.
And the second thing is Israel. Israel still harbor this view of an expanded Israel.
Greater Israel.
The greater Israel, to take over Lebanon, to take over part of Syria, to take over Jordan, the complete bank, and so on and so forth. And the country that is standing in their way is
Iran.
Iran. In fact, it is very, very clear that Iran is the only country that is supporting the resistance in the Middle East. The other Arab countries have all caved in.
The terrible Arab leaders.
But Iran, if they can damage Iran, or if they can do regime change in Iran, then it will be more, give them a more or less a free hand. I said more or less a free hand because as far as I'm concerned, you will never stop resistance. People will always resist oppression in any way. The same thing I see in Latin America. That is why I see this document is opening a new page in Latin American and the Caribbean history, because I think that people will resist domination, people will resist oppression, and what this document is offering us in this part of the world is domination and oppression, and I don't see that people will readily accept that. They will resist, and that is going to disturb the Caribbean being a source of peace.
But how you could plan for the recolonization of South America and the Caribbean, de-recognizing the fifth largest country in the world, Brazil, with a population of over 150 million. That country, that country touches almost every country in South America except two. That is a major global power. They're just going to sit down and let the United States come into South America.
One of the good things about the Trump administration, Donald Trump's presidency, is that it has taken off all pretenses and taken off the mask, and be very, very clear about many of these things. They sanctioned Brazil because they want
Bolsonaro.
They're intervening right now in the election in Honduras, openly intervening. They intervene in the elections in Argentina to say, if you don't vote for this man, we're not going to give you money and so on and so forth. So they're now becoming openly interventionists in these type of activities all over the. That's how you're talking about controlling the fifth largest country in the world. They could do it both ways, by their own power and the strength that they have, and by creating dissent within the country, weaken it from inside, and support some of the forces.
Bolsonaro's son said he wants to run.
Yeah.
So I guess they're going to fund Bolsonaro's son
to fight against Lula. Yeah. So I think they never give up on these things to try to control. But what is also important to note from a more positive point of view, how successful this program will be, is the fact that I speaking for myself, I see a reawakening in the United States and people's consciousness. For instance, the election of Mamdani, a man who openly said that even though he's saying he's a democratic socialist, but there was 10 years, 15, 20 years ago, the term socialism was not.
Bernie Sanders is one of the most popular.
Bernie Sanders now is getting huge crowds all over the United States. He's holding meetings in different places, and he is attracting the biggest crowds now in the United States and openly speaking about democratic socialism. And if you look at what took place in the Middle East with the Israel aggression against the Palestinian people, it was very heartening to see in the United States students coming out. Jews, more and more Jews.
One of the most right-wing Trump supporter, Marjorie Greene.
Yeah, all of them.
She was after Trump's craziness about politics was her.
So there's a huge shift, a big shift in the thinking in the United States. So not only will people in the region not accept oppression easily, they will resist, But even in the United States now, people don't think that what the United
You
States
know
is
the heartland of right-wing republicanism, Miami. The Democrats won the mayorship in Miami day before yesterday.
Oh, I didn't know.
3 decades after 30 years, a Democrat won the mayorship of Miami.
And the Democratic Party is not in the best shape.
Right.
The Democratic Party is in a
It's in a
bad
terrible
shape
shape.
at the moment. And if they, in this shape,
Could
can
win two governors' race. The mayor of New York and the mayor of Miami.
it tells you that a major shift is beginning to take place in American politics, that American politicians has to take into consideration at this point in time.
I am putting this question to you. The Democratic Party is so bitter about the authoritarian, almost semi-fascist line Trump is taking in the United States. Do you envisage a third impeachment attempt if next year they win the House of Representatives and the Senate? I think there's some serious anti-Trump bitterness that is overtaking the
There is a lot of that. Yeah. But you see,
I think he could be impeached next year.
It depends on the issue that they use. I think
The man is semi-fascist, man.
The issue. I don't think they will throw him out because of that. They will probably look at other things to remove him, because Biden was no better than Trump, only that he was less vociferous.
And he was less cognitive than
Trump. And he was. Trump is practically saying that this man was not in charge. He was using automatic pens or something like that to sign a lot of his decree. So I think they don't have disagreements in some of these positions. I don't think the two political parties got disagreements.
No, the Republicans is wrong.
Because there's also this terrible stranglehold that the IPAC got on American politics.
Yeah, the Jewish lobby.
The strong Zionist lobby, which is against a lot of the Jewish organizations that are fighting for helping Palestinians and so forth, because there's a large amount of Jews that are totally opposed to Israel's policy in the Middle East. When I saw an interview yesterday with a Holocaust survivor who said that when we talk about never again, we were not speaking about never again against Jews alone. We were saying never
about
again for humanity as a whole.
And now
Israel is doing that against the Palestinians. In fact, he was very explicit in saying that what Israel is doing, has done, and is doing to the Palestinian people is even worse than what the Nazis did.
Oh yes. The Nazis targeted. The Nazis went on a vendetta in villages when one of their commanders was killed. And what is researchable is that they would take the menfolk from the village and shoot them. That is well documented. These Jewish soldiers and Jewish government leaders, they are indiscriminately killing Palestinians. So if a tank is attacked and an Israeli soldier dies, they bomb people's home in retaliation. The Nazis, Donald Ramotar, and for people looking at this program, the Nazis never did that.
The other thing to note, the difference to note too, is that there was a war going on, the Second World War was going on. There was fight between real military forces opposed against each other. Palestine don't have an army. Palestinian people don't have an army. What is being done to the Palestinians?
They're just bombing people.
Killing people.
Just
without an army.
More than 75,000 people.
One of the reasons, this is also a total misconception to talk about what is going on. There is a war in Gaza. It was never a war. It was always a genocide.
The press is always miseducated. Western press is always miseducated people.
So that I think is a major difference. that they are killing people. And I think this man brought it out in the interview yesterday that he gave, that this is one of the big differences too. You had a rail war.
Yeah, you had a war in Europe,
Yeah.
and Germany versus Western Europe.
And here
Where is the war in? Where's the war in Gaza?
Where is the Palestinian army? They don't have an army. They have people resisting, fighting on equal battle, and that you have to take off your hat to them for the kind of resistance that they have shown.
But we started this program with erasure, civilizational erasure.
25.
I mean from page 25. But Donald, for a government to tell the world that Europe is being diluted, its blood is being diluted because of immigration, to think that a government in today's world can say that.
They're very racist, very racist. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt that they're heavily biased racism involved there. But I don't think that it will necessarily go towards fascism. I mean, it's the same kind of thing, same type of propaganda that the fascists use. But I don't know if it will reach that stage. It is a dangerous situation though, because what they're doing is playing with people's mind to tell them that all the problems that they have is as a result of immigrants coming into the country and so forth.
Non-white people,
Yeah.
say non-white people, right?
Yeah.
They don't mind Ukrainian and white South Africans coming in the country. I think this man Trump, I think the Trump and the Republican Party, Donald, really has reminiscences of what was going on in the churches in
I mean,
Germany.
imagine they have shifted so far away from position of human rights and so forth that they are not even mentioning that what happened in Israel is a genocide. Instead, they are supplying them with all the means to continue to do this kind of genocide. In my view, many of the Western countries are not complicit. That's the word that is being used. They're not complicit. Some of them are participants in what is happening.
For our viewers around the world, do you know what the immigration minister said of Canada? The immigration minister said of Canada, the academics and parliamentarians asked the Canadian government to facilitate Gaza students to come to Canadian University, those who have applied to do their doctorate and masters, and they can't, there's no computer to use. You know what the Canadian immigration minister said? And she has to be a stupid, idiotic, ignorant woman. She said, there's no special dispensation for Gaza students. They have to apply like everybody else. And so the academics and some parliamentarians were so incensed. These people don't have no house to live in, and you tell that immigration minister is a jackass.
There might not be any special position for Palestinians, but there certainly is for Israeli students, pro-Zionist students to go there.
How could a minister see a place that is completely destroyed, no running water, no lights, and say the students there cannot be treated differently from students who applied? No, Donald.
That's the hypocrisy.
Donald, I think Western civilization is falling. It's failing and it's falling. To think a minister of the... And look what the Canadian High Commission said in Guyana. We must put pressure on our government to accept the recommendation of the EU Observer Mission. Is he in, right now, his office is next to Red House here across the road. Is he going to tell his immigration minister, you can't treat Palestinian students like that?
Well, the other thing to note is that the level of racism is rising. Changes are, and that is also giving rise to a lot of change, because as I said, it's generating within their society a deeper understanding of the nature of the type of governments that they have to live under. And they themselves are beginning to suffer. Look at so many of the students who could not graduate because they took a position to oppose genocide in the Middle East, because they're criticizing their government's position. Look at all of these things that are taking place here. Recently, we also saw, even it's not, all the facts haven't come out as yet, but we know that one of the head of the South Command of the military force.
Yeah, he was dismissed. Yeah.
Not dismissed, he resigned. Yeah. Because I think, this is not, I mean, this is speculation on the news, but many people are saying that he don't want to participate in illegal kind of activities, like shooting of those little boats.
But why they can't intercept the boats?
Exactly.
And capture the people?
Exactly.
They're just seeing the boats, and they don't know if an
proof.
auntie or uncle or babies in the boats, and they're just shooting the boats.
There's no proof that these boats are drug boats. They're destroying the evidence, even to find, even if their were drug boats, you can't find it. It tells me, or at least I believe, that one of the reasons they're doing that because they themselves know that there is no drugs on those boats. And one of the other things that strikes me when I look at some of the comments that are being made from very high officials in the government is the casual way they talk about killing people. Very casual way that we will kill them.
There's a Nazi guy, there's a senator named Tom Cotton. That man perhaps is even worse than Hitler. He said, yes, kill them.
Yeah, they're very casual. That just like if you're taking a cup of tea, that they kill these people.
But given our age and what we have read so much in our lives, don't you believe that after Hitler and the war and what, you believe we could be witnessing and seeing the implementation of these narratives?
But
it's Nazi narratives.
It's unfortunate. Yes, you're quite right about that. But also there's a certain kind of resistance that we talked about what happened in America and so forth during this time, but also what happened in Europe. Look at the big strike that they had, a general strike in Italy against what was the government for what was happening in Gaza. Yeah. That, to my mind, is
the one I like. The one I liked is when it was the celebration of Holocaust Day. The Italian government tell people in respect for Holocaust, there should be no protests in Gaza. And the Italians came out in their hundreds of thousands. Yeah. The people just said, to hell with Gaza, there's a Holocaust, there's a new Holocaust going on here.
And we are having this meeting today on International Human Rights Day. And I think this is a good way for us to pay respect to all the champions, the genuine champions for human rights all over the world, and to condemn a lot of the atrocities that are taking place in our time, which, as you rightly mentioned, who would have thought that we would have come to a stage where we're seeing this happening in the 21st century, at a time when we are so advanced in science and technology, so advanced in culture and what have you, but yet a section of the world's population remains to be very barbaric, which reminds me of the famous statement made by Rosa Luxemburg more than 100 years ago, when she said, it's either socialism or barbarism. And I think we're at that juncture in many parts of the world. We're at that juncture where if we don't have some more democratic changes,
barbarism will reign supreme. I think barbarism is reigning supreme. When I heard what that Canadian immigration minister said, we live in a barbaric age. Donald, the very first paper I wrote as a first-year student at UG was on Nazi Germany. Look, I'm seeing Nazi Germany now. We have to go. We were interviewing the former president of Ghana, Donald Ramotar, on this document, National Security Strategy by the United States, a very, 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 very serious, profoundly disturbing document. We were coming to you from the photography room of Red House, the Chelly Jagan Research Institute, You could see the background there, endless photographs of Dr. Dragon, his wife, his associates. Thanks for being with us. Please enjoy whatever is left of Wednesday evening. We will see you on Friday. As usual, thanks to President Ramotar for always accepting our invitation. As I normally say, catch you later, man. Bye-bye.